wonderful people all over this country. She is a beautiful
Guyana will become the next Dubai, and we, the citizens of Guyana, are super excited to benefit from our homeland the same way the citizens of Dubai benefit from theirs.
This is what life is like for citizens from the Emirate of Dubai. When you are born, your parents pay nothing. Your delivery and checkups for the next 9 months are all free. Then you grow up and you go to school. Local school in Dubai is free. And so are universities, because Dubai will pay for you to get a degree.
I studied at Zayed University and New York University, both for free.
Who's gonna pay for that?
The government.
Then you get married. If you can't afford the wedding, you get $20,000 to throw a wedding. And after marriage, every local Dubai family gets this: free land. Did you get free land?
Yes.
Did you get free land?
Yes.
Did you get free land?
Sure, yes.
And if you cannot afford the home, then you get a grant to build it for free.
I also can't afford building a house. I can get a 0-interest loan on housing.
Zero?
Zero.
If you need to go to the hospitals are free. And if you need surgery that's not available here, they will fly you to another country to get treatment for free. When you become a senior citizen, you get discounts, many discounts. And if you live alone and can't afford it, Dubai will even send a caretaker to look after you for free. And when you die, well, in Dubai, that's also free. Your funeral will be taken care of, and Dubai will build a full tent with air conditioning within 5 hours of your death next to your home, so your friends can come and say goodbye to you.
Guyana will become the next Dubai.
with wonderful people all over this country. She is a beautiful Guyana.
A very good evening to all our viewers on Globespan 24x7. As we bring you our Wednesday night program. I know Dr. Rose and I are not the hosts of this program, but the hosts for the Wednesday night evening program are all taken up with different things, so we are asked to fill in. So we want to thank you and welcome all of you to this program. We want to thank Nohar Singh for making this platform available, and of course Devin Bisu, our technical specialist. Today we want to talk about migration and shortage of workers, the workforce in Guyana. We know recently, only 2 days ago, the government of Guyana presented a national budget, and in that budget, there is a lot of capital work that is expected to be done. Currently, we are talking about getting workers, and there seems to be a shortage of skilled labor to do most of the projects in Guyana. So where do we go and what is going on in Guyana? To help us through this program tonight is Senior Counsel Timothy Jonas. We know he is chairman of the ANOG, which is the New United Guyana. And Mr. Jonas, welcome to the program tonight.
Thanks, Dr. Sugrim. Just a small correction. I'm no longer chairman of ANOG. I stayed on as general secretary, but ANOG has a new chairman. We have internal elections every year, and at the last round of elections, I stepped down, and the chairman is now one Dr. Mark France.
Okay.
So just that small correction. I'm here as Timothy Jonas.
Thank you for reminding us. So you're general secretary, and of course, no stranger to us also, Mr. Gobin Harbhajan. We all know he was a regional councillor for Region 6. He was also the Prime Minister's representative in Region 6, and he worked continuously throughout Region 5 and 6. So he's well acquainted with those regions. And of course, he was also, like me, part of the AFC in the early days. Mr. Harbhajan, welcome to the program tonight.
Thank you for having me tonight on an important topic like this.
And of course, with me is my co-host, Dr. Rose. Dr. Rose, welcome.
Thank you, and welcome, Mr. Jonas, and welcome, Mr. Harbhajan. Tonight, we'll have a lively discussion, and welcome to all our viewers across the country and across the globe.
Gentlemen, according to the United Nations, in 2020, they reported that of countries with population of 750,000 or more, Guyana was identified as the country where 36.4% of its population was living abroad, migrated. That was 2020. We know since then the pandemic had a hiatus on people leaving Guyana, whether it's through immigration, permanent or otherwise. Now that the pandemic is over, we are now seeing also a great migration of Guyanese. With the oil and gas sector and with the agriculture sector, with the building boom and so on, what will this do to Guyana? Maybe Mr. Jonas, we can start with you.
Charles, you linked people leaving and you asked what the building boom is going to do to impact that trend?
Well, will it have an effect on the building boom? Because if I don't know, the people who are leaving, are they skilled? Are they unskilled? I don't know. But what impact will the migration of Guyanese have on this huge project that is going on in Guyana, the building boom?
Well, migration of Guyanese has been happening since independence. The brain drain is not called that accidentally. It is the most forward-thinking, progressive, active, and innovative people that have the imagination and the willpower to bestir themselves and leave our shores. They leave because of a trend, a pattern of bad governance. They leave to escape the oppression. And more as our economy continued to slide down into disarray, they left because the standard of living was increasingly bad and it was difficult to look after your children. Unemployment is one aspect of that, yes. But unemployment has so many facets in the discussion of what causes unemployment and how to help it. I don't like to link it just to the question of a construction boom. The construction boom is as a result of a number of things. One of them is the allocation of house lots for residences by the government, which has been an extremely good, extremely well-received initiative and has transformed our society, not just over the last 2 years, but the previous 15 years, since ECHOS was developed back in the 90s, has transformed our society from one of landlord and tenant rentals to one of home ownership. It's been a very good innovation, a very good development. It has not changed the trend of a poorly managed economy and of migration. So I don't know that those two are necessarily connected. We continue to see a construction boom now as we have more foreign investment, more foreigners coming in, attracted by promises of gas and oil rather than promises of El Dorado. And our population demographic is changing. You're hearing a lot of Spanish and Portuguese spoken on the streets. You're seeing a lot of different ethnicities that we're not accustomed to seeing here in Guyana. And that's a good thing, because whereas we had a brain drain recently, again, it is the innovative and the forward thinking and the young and the progressive who will be coming to Guyana to try to benefit from what they see as our economic boom. So I think it's a good thing to encourage that immigration, and that will necessitate more housing, more businesses, more construction. I'm not sure, though, that it might not be an oversimplification to link the employment issue with the construction issue.
Okay, and you brought a good point there. But before I go into that, you mentioned two things: poor governance and migration. You want to elaborate on poor governance?
I've been beating that drum for years, Charles. When Mr. Burnham took over from the British, he nationalized. He replaced capitalists who did not have a good history and a good reputation in terms of how they treated us natives, but who know how to run business with his friends. And we saw a decline of bauxite, we saw a decline of sugar, we saw a decline of everything on a steady plane until the economy was rock bottom in the 80s. We didn't see much of a turnaround after a brief renaissance under Hoyt when he floated our dollar and created a realistic system. So you had a brief renaissance, you had a change of government, and you didn't see much of an improvement in our economy as things continue to deteriorate. We continue to be second poorest after Haiti. We now have a free bonanza because we have gas and oil. So there's a lot of money that is suddenly available through no effort of ours. We can't claim credit for it. It just happened to be there. So foreigners have come in to throw a percentage at us and take the rest. And the question now is, what do we do with that money? But I don't think anyone will accuse our successive governance of any great financial innovation or great economic or social plan to keep us where we were in 1967 as one of the more advanced countries in the Caribbean. I don't think anyone will accuse any of our successive governments of having achieved that.
So they, as Guyanese migrate, and you're seeing in Georgetown and across Guyana, we're seeing, and I'm sure Gobin is seeing quarantine here as well, different ethnic groups coming to Guyana: the Brazilian, the Venezuelan, the Cubans, the Haitians. Yes, people from the Caribbean, they look like us, so they're not different ethnic group. Are they coming with the skills that is required for this projected boom that we're talking about? Mr.
Sorry,
Jonas?
is that at me or is that at...
Yeah, Mr. Jonas, yeah.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. We all pretend that we can control this thing, and we do it from top to bottom. The government tries to control the economy to the last penny, and we try to discuss if people who are coming into the country have the skills. Well, how an economy works and how the best structure, which is a capitalist structure, works, is that you throw your lot, you try your hand, and you sink or you swim. But once they come, it is for the government to ensure that there is a policy that they know that these people who are coming into the country, first of all, have the wherewithal to look after themselves and won't be relying on our dilapidated system of free health and free education and overburdening that. The government has to make sure that they're coming with jobs or with investment money so that they are contributing and not adding to the burden. And we have to have policies in place where they are paying their taxes, they are registering, and they are contributing. But then they will, after that, they will be able either to contribute, to start a business, to do a job. But to me, the government's job is to ensure that when someone asks for a visa to come into our country, they are demonstrating that they have the ability to pay for themselves, not to be a burden to the system. That's the best we can do.
And that's another discussion. Mr. Harbhajan, in the quarantine, Region 5, Region 6, are you seeing an influx of foreigners as Guyanese migrate?
Yes. Charles, let me talk a little bit, or touch a little bit for Jonas. Was talking about the migration. Beside our growth and our economy and our rich country, people are seeking a greener pasture, especially in the countrysides of Guyana, Region 5, 6, and Essequibo. That, like Jonas said, it's been around decades now. one of the things is that the American and the Canadian make it attractive for Guyanese, skilled Guyanese and non-skilled Guyanese, and more easy for them to seek a greener pasture and a better life. Whilst you said Brazilian, Venezuelan, and the Cubans and Haitians are coming in, we are making it more. If you want to bring them legally, there is no system to set in place that what skills or whatever they have. They just come in, and if employer want to bring them into the workforce, the list of red tape they have to go through make it difficult. Well, Guyanese is going abroad more easily than those people coming in. So we do have a problem. And migration has been increased. As you said, the topic is about migration. Over the past 15, 20 years, migration has increased. Worse off during the 2015 to 2020, when the closure of the sugar estate, most of these people depended on that, and most of them would have a 10-year visitor visa, B1, B2 visitor visa. The U.S. Embassy make it so attractive that they don't need document to apply for a visitor visa. It's zero document. So they go in there with anything on the application, and they were successful. So soon as they find difficult and hard time to feed their family, they gone abroad, and those are the people who overstay, and then they have family follow. 2020 to now, you have the flood came in, the whole thing with the pandemic, and during that time, farmers, and I'm speaking on a layman term here, from a Barbese point of view, and as a Cuban, that the farmers would have find it difficult to survive because you have the flood and they was going through. Some would have a hard time getting the flood relief, and to stay afloat, those farmers would have visa, and some gone, and what you have now is a handful of people in the agriculture sector, and I don't know for how long they will be sustained or how they be going, but the migration is not stopping. The U.S. Embassy now open on a Saturday, and the permanent resident, the number has increased also. For the past 16 or 17 years, Morrissey Hospital was the only hospital the U.S. Embassy outsourced to do medical for permanent resident. The workflow is so much and the migration is so big. They bring in three other private hospitals to help out with it. My office alone, my two offices alone, but from November to now, must have got over 400 resident migration to migrate. Those are families. So we have a problem there. Later on, we can discuss how we go forward with that.
Yeah, but with people leaving, is there still a problem with employment in the Region 6 area?
Yes. Problem is the private sector is facing a war right now to finding people to work. Then the government came in with the 40,000 10-day job. That put more pressure on the private sector. You have even farmers, let me use that for example, because that's what I know I'll speak about. Some of these owners who are doing 500 to 400 acres, they have to jump on a tractor themselves to go to Baghdad because they're not finding the workforce. A man plant 2 acre pepper, he has to go and harvest it himself. So most of these guys don't want this train, they rather pack up and go. Now, how many politicians then and now are looking at what's happening? I have brought this up many times, but I don't know how you can prevent the migration at the rate it's going, because I think I saw a report where Guyana, with the diaspora, Guyanese is the largest in the United States, I think 36.4%. So people go there, as Jonas say, I'll use it in my terms, that they're seeking a better opportunity and a better life. Guyana, for instance, they may have big house, big community. Some people can't even have access to the big house and community. They can't have proper access to police. So what they do, if they go and stuck in a basement or something abroad, they know they have all those things at their fingertips. We have to start to look at that. And I mentioned it on this program and a previous program, that we have people in top position are not looking to trap these people to stay in this country. We are talking about skills labor, skills people going abroad, Charles. To be honest, the unskilled one who also is seeking to go abroad, because you still have people going to the Bagnum picking pepper, Bora, Baigan, and they do it the hard way. You know, it's more labor. And in other countries, when they work with people, they go on a press button system. So we have to set up system and training to help these farmers in areas that they can make this job easy. A guy gonna throw 5 bag manure on his back just for the pay. When he come back then barefoot. So these are the things, or if a man plant a garden, so we're not teaching them how to, or not set a system to make it easy. So when they see the family abroad, the way they live in and the way they work, they do press button, and you don't have to have a degree to do that. So we need to change things and change the mindset so they can start to stay here. Don't take the qualified job and give it to party members on both sides, the coalition and the PPP. Because what happened, qualified people with 6, 7, 10 subjects who cannot fit in, what you think they're going to do, Charles?
Yeah, and your point is taken. There's so many things for us to talk about. Dr. Rose, you want to jump in there?
Yes, I want to jump in. My first question to you, Mr. Jonas. You mentioned a number of things that white people are leaving the country, not being able to get employment here, poor governance, and so forth. But are those the only reasons why they're leaving?
Your mute is on, Timothy. Mr. Jonas, you unmute yourself.
Okay, maybe the starting point, you're right, Euclid, is to talk about what are the push-pull factors. Now, you know, when they say that when you live in with someone who's not sane, after a while, that insanity becomes the norm. And I find we got a peculiar way in Guyana. We are so accustomed to our oppression that we don't see it anymore. But you get a chance when you go abroad to recognize how different things are in Guyana. I'll give you some examples. You're driving down the road and the policeman pulls you over for what he calls a routine traffic check. Now, I am yet to see any law that permits any policeman to pull you over on a routine traffic check. But we have permanent roadblocks in Berbice, at the Weldad station. We have many roadblocks often happening at Sparendam for no reason except what is called a routine check. When Parliament sits, the roads are blocked off. When there's some function somewhere, the puffed up self-important politicians will block off a road. We are so easily oppressed and we are so silently complicit in our own oppression that as soon as you have experience of something else, you begin to question what you have previously seen as the norm. Every Guyanese is familiar with the words drive to the station or a phone call, come to the station. I am yet to see any power given in any law to anybody to instruct you, drive to a station. But we are accustomed to it, we're all familiar with it. So you have that form of oppression. You then have the oppression of the successive governments who are determined to control the finances, so they continue to be the main contract awarders. So you have the family and friends arrangement with the corruption that entails. That makes every businessman afraid to speak out, because every businessman is dependent on the state for at least part of his income. So really, the independent minds, the independent speakers, the middle class, the upper, the mobile, the people who should be the salt of the community are cowering, they're afraid. And that does not lend to a healthy society. We remember, the older folk remember the difficulty that the independent newspapers had even starting up. How many excuses were presented for any competition to chronicle what hell Stabroek News had. That's oppression. And then when Stabroek News got a little too uppity, they did not receive any government ads. Even now, if you look at the Chronicle and you see how the Chronicle is published and how the Chronicle portrays one side as against the other side, and go back to 2019 and see how that same Chronicle portrayed the other side as opposed to the first side, that is part of our oppression. So yes, teachers are paid $100,000 a month, 500 US. They gotta go. Nurses are paid 100,000, 500 US. They gotta migrate. The public servants are kept in poverty. They got to migrate. The farmers, and I'm not talking about the landowners, I'm talking about the laborers that Harbhajan talking about. They got to migrate. They have no choice. The education system has deteriorated on a straight
mentioned that you have two offices looking into preparation of applications for visas and so forth, public quarantine. Am I right?
The one in East Berbice and one in East Coast.
Okay. Statistics have showed, and this is going back to 2020, that on average, 12,000 Indians leave Guyana every year, compared to 4,000 blacks. Have you have a microscopic view to support this type of figures?
I don't think the numbers is that high, but it's an easy way to track a number like that, because the US will brand the Guyana case with the migration case with a GEO number. That should be the front number.
No, I'm asking you. This is what came from the embassies. These numbers came from the embassies, but you being the one who preparing visas and so forth, applications, have you seen how many Indians as pertain to blacks are applying?
99.9% of Indian. The percentage of black I have in my office on a daily basis, you might not even see them, to be honest with you. I think for whole of 2022, I must have 3 of them migrate to the United States. I don't. That's what I know. A family of 3. That was a bit from near. I know the area, because why I have interest in it, because as being a public figure, I make note of it compared to the Indian that migrate, and and it's not poor people migrating these days. Dr. Rose's middle class people also hitting the road. So yes, the number can be right what you're seeing there, but it will be wrong. My figures would be a little less than that, but I sure you have it correct there.
And the other figures I have here, they're saying that of the total migration in Guyana, 66% are from Berbice region. Have you seen something like that?
I think it's more than 66 compare. I deal with people from region 3, but I sure there's other offices like mine. But I deal with people, but Berbice, boy, it is 7 o'clock. My office will open and close sometimes 6 or 7 at night. Sometimes you don't get a chance to eat. So the numbers are high. The numbers are real high, and it get higher. Because let me make an example for public information. Person who gets sponsored 2007, 2008 come down with an F4 sponsoring, which is brother and sister. They all getting through now. So if a sibling sponsor the whole gang of siblings, they all getting through now. So they all, they all go in. Some may have tenure, they had to give that up. The F3 is parent sponsor children. 2011, 2012 is now coming through. So if a mother have 5 children and they have children and grandchildren, the whole pack is going. So all those are coming out. So the numbers increase by huge. And then you have husband and wife, which only take 8 to 9 months with a citizenship sponsoring. On citizen is 7 years with green cards. So the US make it so easy and attractive, and it's the free flow, and everything is computer scan and upload to get to go. It's very simple now compared to back in the days where you have to go and follow the pen and paper affidavit of support and got to provide a hard copy W-2 and those type of things. So it become a lot easier with a transcript, and bam, the whole family gone. And you don't have to show hard cash to carry this family anymore, Dr. Rose. All you have to do, you have to get a job, and you have to have a W-2, and 2 people sign up, bam, 5, 6 family gone. And they continue, the cycle continue. Borbis hit the chart. You make, I know you come Borbis a lot, I don't know how much Jonas come. If you drive from a hiker to Crabwood Creek, you will see huge houses, beautiful houses. How many of those houses is fully occupied? You may find a villager, some guy at the bottom living there, and you do maintenance of those houses are locked down. People at the diaspora in the US have an interest of Guyana to come back, but every time they mind lean towards Guyana, something tragic happens. Either a protest happen, a race protest, or you have a crime happen where someone get murdered, and then the whole mindset change again. So the houses are empty. All you have people doing maintenance, cleaning, and slashing yard for those people. So you don't have a population, it's decreasing.
Okay. The other question I want to ask you is this. We talk about skilled laborers leaving Guyana, and that may be true. But the question is, most of the people getting visas, 10-year visas, visitors visas, and permanent visas, and student visas to travel abroad, 70% of them are women. Are they part of the skilled labor drain? Brain drain?
That question for me?
Yes.
Yes, 70%. Yes, I see the number of women are high and who are migrating with students visa. Surprisingly, if they do have a 10-year visa, they go overseas, go to one of these universities, and go to the administration, convert that into a student's visa, and they stay. The number for skills people leaving is, yes, that's high compared to normal laborer and farmers. This the skills one. Once they finish university, we have a UG campus in Borbis, and I keep beating this drum since when I was the Prime Minister rep and the RDC councillor. If you don't find job for these people, as much as I was from a political party, yes, we are political members. Some of us will get jobs, but we should fit political party people in job where they can perform, rather than give them high position and paying job, and then you sideline the qualified people, and they will seek a greener pasture, as Jonas said.
Mr. Jonas, I have a question for you, but I know you can't read the mindset of the Americans. But why do you think America, of all the countries, have made it so easy for people to migrate? It's not easy to migrate to Canada. I know Britain has an open policy, but still it's not easy because we saw someone who went there and was turned around and sent back home. So why do you think the United States have made it so easy? That's in your opinion.
I don't want to speak out of turn. I'm not aware that anything substantial changed to make it easy. The lines I see outside the embassy are still the same. Admittedly, a lot of them are Cuban now. And the number of people I hear who apply and are turned away are still the same. Why do you say that it has changed so that it is now easy? What criteria have changed?
But based on what Mr. Harbhajan is saying.
Zero document, Jonas.
Yes, but I still hear about people who apply and are turned away.
Okay, Mr. Jonas.
You're not going to have 100%. You're going to have someone turned down because of false information, but most are getting through. If you look, the numbers are very high now.
My next question is to you, Mr. Jonas. What do you think the government of Guyana can do to stop this brain drain?
After 50 years? Well, as I mentioned, you got a rainbow of problems that it's created a perfect storm. So you have to start with the entire spectrum. You can't concentrate on one thing. But here's the thing. With oil and gas, our economy will grow, and our economy will grow faster than anywhere else in the world. So we will be attracting people. Already, there is a huge demand for qualified personnel. So if you're an engineer, an accountant, a heavy machine operator, anything like that, you got a job and you're going to be doing well. Not necessarily in gas and oil, but in construction and mining, there is a huge demand for people with skill. If you're an electrician, if you're a construction man, if you can do that kind of thing, there's a demand for you. Unfortunately, our education system has not produced enough qualified folk. We don't have the engineers, we don't have the chemists, we don't have the physicists. So the people at the top of the food chain have to come from abroad. The way to change that is through education. So we need to be incentivizing our workforce, the people who already have jobs, to get educated. We need to be paying our public servants and our teachers and our salaried folk. If a nurse who is earning less than $500 here knows that she will earn 5 times that, 6 times that in England, that nurse is going to be heading to England in a hurry. And if you check the hospitals, as Harbhajan has pointed out, you will observe so many people who are qualified going to get their medicals as part of the application for the visa to get out of this country to go and earn that better salary. So essentially, we are almost a training ground for people to come to train to be nurses, to train to be heavy machine operators. And as soon as they get a chance, they're gone and they're earning a salary abroad. So we got to pay them more. So there is no teacher in Guyana who should be earning less than $1,000 US a month. But this budget has introduced a minimum wage of 88,000 or something like that. 85. And teachers are still earning 125,000. So you can't keep them. To incentivize those teachers, no teacher who has a degree should be earning less than 1,500 US a month. So to incentivize them, you give them time off to go and do their degree if they don't have a degree, and they have the knowledge that as soon as they have that degree, they get another $100,000 on their salary. That is how you incentivize and keep them. That is how you attract quality teachers, so that the students that they are teaching come out properly trained and ready to go to a university that you are similarly gearing to teach them. Look, history is important. History, literature, the arts are some of the most important subjects you can do. Because as the Romans say, without history, you repeat the same mistakes. We have been teaching that at UG, and we have not been teaching engineering, chemical engineering, the items that you really do need in oil and gas in our growing economy. We need to incentivize our police so that a policeman should not be earning less than 1,000 US a month. And that police needs to be incentivized to get a degree. And we need to be tailoring our degrees for the police. I've seen it done, and I've heard of it done abroad, where if you're a policeman, you're encouraged as part of your degree to do literature, to do a couple law courses. But you know why literature is important? Because when a policeman is on a witness stand and he says, I arrested Dr. Rose because I had reasonable cause to believe that he had stolen that handbag. And a lawyer stands up to say, why did you have reasonable cause to believe? The policeman can't answer that question and has lost the case. And it is the training that you get and the discipline that you get from discussing those same intangibles, those same concepts in a literature class, in a history class, that enables the policeman to discuss intelligently that he saw that Dr. Rose was breathless, that he was running or hurrying, that he had something hidden under his coat that he couldn't see, that he was looking behind him as if he expected pursuit. And that is what gave the policeman cause to believe that Dr. Rose was acting suspiciously. But there are very few police who can now articulate that. And that is why education is so important, and they need to be incentivized. And the only way to do that is by putting money in their pockets so that these people can buy a car honestly, look after their family honestly, go on a holiday every now and then honestly. Otherwise, migration will continue. Otherwise, oppression will continue, and incompetence in places like public service, teaching, police will continue. We have to incentivize these people. They go abroad and they do the same job. A nurse will do the same job, and that nurse, he or she, will be able to look after himself and his family on the salary he gets doing the same job abroad. Why on earth would they stay in Guyana?
Okay, I have one final question before my colleague comes on. Now, during the 70s and the 80s, and this is a question that most people don't want to hear it, and they'll say, well, it's a racist point, but it's not a racist point, it's a fact. Indians left this country in droves because of the Forrest Burnham government. We all are aware of that. Literature have written astonishingly on that all over the world. That massive migration patterns in the 70s and 80s was due to the Burnham government, dictatorial regime. But now we have the PEP government. And during Burnham time, I can give the statistics, but I have not go back there. But between 2002 and 2017, they said over 55,000 Indians have left Guyana. And that was under PEP government. Why? You, Mr. Jonas, and then Mr. Harbhajan. Why do you think? Go ahead.
I noticed, Euclid, that this is the second time you have tried to align the discussion of migration with the discussion of race. And I don't agree with you.
Okay.
You see, you asked the question, and you asked Harbhajan, and what percentage of the people who pass through his hands are Indo-Guyanese as opposed to Afro. But there's one simple statistic you could look at, which to me definitively rejects that theory. In 1960s, we had a small majority of Indo-Guyanese in the demographic of our population. Today, we have a small minority. They're still the largest ethnic group, but they're now a minority. So they have lost ground in terms of the overall percentage of the population of Guyana. Now, that tells me definitively, because trust me, for full disclosure, those who are listening, Euclid and I are actually family. And he will tell you that we make children like rabbits. We're all over the place. My grandfather had, I think, 13 children. So if the numbers remain constant, and in fact, Afro-Guyanese have gained ground in terms of the overall population count, then the migration got to be even-handed. Both have been leaving. It's not just Indo-Guyanese left on the Burnham. Of my father's 7 siblings who made it to adulthood, 8 siblings who made it to adulthood, he's the only one left in Guyana. So that's 8 Afro-Guyanese that left the country. I'm sure your personal experience will reflect the same. So everybody is leaving. The oppression and the poverty and the hard times is not just against one race. Poor governance doesn't just affect one side. It affects everybody, and everybody's been migrating.
Mr. Harbhajan, well, I was only giving you statistics that exist and what was taking place during the 70s and 80s compared to other time period. Mr. Harbhajan?
Dr. Rose, that's a very, very good point you bring. Jonas hit a very good piece there, that in the 70s and 80s, people then was having more than 1, 2, 5 or 6 children. Coming into the 90s, parents these days either make 1 or 2 children. Coming along the line, these children, the parents they already have wealth where they acquire, most of them are even middle class, and they try to get the children out of Guyana in most cases. So the migration would look like a number of large increase, like you say, from the 90s come down, and it still continue. but the population has a decrease by itself because you find one race is making more children than the other race. These days, Indian don't make those type of, I mean, a few must they have, but I know 1 and 2 children is that's where the goal and the objective is compared to the other race. So the numbers of migration it's high in all in top to the grassroots level. I want to disagree a little bit with Jonas and the part where he say that why some of them he's talking about the skills one and the nurses, etc. I believe if how you can change migration or how you can change the mindset of people who are thinking of migration or who are thinking to remigrate back to Guyana, which the government encouraged them to come back, is that better security, better community, not better, I mean, better salary is one, but how in God's name you gonna wanted to build your family in a second or third lot, or you live a day where you don't have your trench cleaned. So the opportunity, the first opportunity, these people go and see a greener pasture and the way they structured, they wanted to stay there. So you have to start change the groundwork here by using all these municipality and NDC to work to beautify nice our community. Police stations should have vehicle, you know, community policing supposed to be exist so people feel secure. Every time you have a robbery or a murder or something happen, you call station. So you're not encouraging migration people to come back. If a guy come back to Guyana, the first thing he's asking for a gun license and a duty free, and those are just things he wanted. Otherwise, to that, you're doing nothing within the community or your towns, except Georgetown is looking good. You know, the countryside where the migration happening more, you don't find much of beautifying community and to keep it up to standard. And basic thing, light, water, internet, blackouts still exist. Yes, it's been, I was the former director of Gaisuku, SCI, Cogen, which I worked hard to put it. We was producing a number of good quality of megawatt there. I don't know what happened now. So you have to look at all these things. No one wants to deal with blackout this day and age. So when you take a family out of Blackbush or Mahaika or Crabwood Creek or in the countryside, Port Morant, and they go overseas and they visit one time, they don't want to come back. Even if you pay them more, what Jonas say, you can start with the skills thing and you will put that in place. But that one thing with the money, you can buy a brand new car and then you have to put the we say cage wheel to go in a street to park it at your bottom house. So it erodes on the other side. We are an oil-rich country. We have a huge budget. I believe the budget should have been more. 300 billion of that will go on payroll for public servant and vehicles and luxury for region and however if you and students loan and all these things will add up. So I believe that to get it you have to go more.
Charles, over to you.
Okay, very interesting discussion, and I like Mr. Jonas' answer, but Mr. Jonas, I think both you and Dr. Rose and Harbhajan is basically on the same level. And I want to get into that quickly before I move on, is that, yes, in the 70s and 80s, in my experience, living in the countryside, a lot of Indo-Guyanese left to Suriname, to Venezuela, they left to Brazil, some left to Trinidad, those who couldn't go to North America. And most of those Guyanese was Indo-Guyanese. A lot of Afro-Guyanese went to Barbados and to Trinidad and so on. And of course, those who had visas came to the United States. In Barbados, a lot of the Indo-Guyanese left to go to Canada because you're going to Canada without a visa. So massive migration out of Barbados, most of them were Indians. As you know, the Indian population at one time was over 50% of Guyana's population. Now the Indian population is about 39%. And by the next election, based on what Mr. Harbhajan is saying, that population is like to be like 37%. The African population, on the other hand, was about 40% of the population. Now the African population moved down from 40 to about 29, somewhere there. So both went down, but in terms of numbers, more numbers of Indo-Guyanese left Guyana than Afro-Guyanese. Not that both didn't leave, but the majority of those who left were of Indian origin. And that's what I'm, so both of your answers are correct, but just, I think, put in perspective. Now, let's look at this, Mr. Jonas. You mentioned that we give the policeman an extra, salary when they get qualified and so on, the nurses, the teachers, and so on. And I totally agree with you. Now, the question I want to ask you, where will these funds come from to sustain that payment? Bearing in mind the current contract, and I think I know you're still in the same page, you are one of those who don't want us to renegotiate the contract. Mr. Ramjatan, on the other hand, is saying we should, because when the contract was signed, things have changed. We had at that time a few million barrels of oil. Now we have 11 billion barrels. It might go up to 15 billion barrels, 20 billion barrels, because things have changed and those are conditions for renegotiation. So my question first to you is, how can we get the funds to pay our professionals to stay in Guyana with the kind of revenue we're getting now and the proposed revenue based on the existing contract?
Okay. Now, the fact is that our revenue has doubled already as a result of oil. So if, and forgive me, it's not exact, but nearly doubled. So if we've got twice as much money to play with as we had 3 years ago, 5 years ago, I think the question where to get the money to increase salaries for public servants is moot. The money is there. What's happening is that we've got profligate spending on contracts, some necessary, but most, as far as I can see, not well thought out, and billions being spent. And if you look at the budget, you see a lot of money going on things like security. But when they say you're spending on security, you're spending on new buildings, contracts for new buildings, contracts for new vehicles. And every time I hear contract, I think family and friends. You see, there's no kickback in increasing salaries, but there's a kickback in a contract. There is enough money. And if you are talking about the need to reduce crime and the benefit to the society that will occur from reduction of crime, and the benefit to the economy because people can invest and foreign and investors will be encouraged to invest and the economy will grow because of a stable society and reduced crime, then you are making an investment by paying your police more. If you're talking about the need for our population to be equipped with the skills to qualify as engineers, to qualify as chemists, to qualify to compete on the job market in the new economy, then you're paying your teachers not as if it's some kind of charity, but as an investment. Because those same youngsters, when they graduate and they get their jobs and they're competing on the job market, will be paying their taxes and contributing back to the economy. So I don't think that we should be looking at this as if it's some kind of handout. It's not. What's a handout is those part-time jobs that we know don't serve any purpose and are created just for the sake of saying, here, vote for me. But if there is a well-organized and well-structured system, and if we truly intend to improve our education and our security, the way to do it is by ensuring we have the best people as teachers and the best people as police. And you can't do that unless they are receiving a salary which gives them that dignity that they become part of the salt of the earth, middle class of our society. If your child tells you he wants to be a policeman or a policewoman, you must feel good because you know that that is the kind of job that earns the respect of the society and will enable your child financially to look after his family. That's not the case now, but it's the case in Canada. It's the case in the States. It's the case in England.
So you're saying, Mr. Jonas, is that the government need to balance the budget rather than taking all this revenue and putting in a capital program. They should cut back on the capital program and spend some of those on unemployment costs. Is that what you're saying?
And when you treat it as either or, I think you're making a mistake Because if you look at the real figures, the real numbers which will be involved, I think that you will find that it's not that much money in terms of the overall size of the economy.
But don't forget, if the government increase salaries of employees, and I'm for that too. Now, Dr. Rose has been calling for that every program we have. Then the private sector will have to keep, follow suit. So there's only so much employment the government can provide.
Forgive me, Charles. I don't see a problem with that.
Okay.
We have some very wealthy people driving around, and the money that they want to pay their employees is what they pay for gas every month for their Prados. That can't be the case. If we have that disparity in wealth in this country, we are going to have social disorder. Resentment is already growing. Right now at our court, the registry staff are earning $100,000 a month or thereabouts. You cannot keep competent people at that salary. You cannot expect, you, a litigant, cannot expect to go to court and get a good response and a good result and quick action if the people you are interfacing with are not motivated to do their jobs properly. You cannot go to a police station or go to a school and quarrel that your child isn't being educated or that a crime isn't being investigated if the people you are encountering are not motivated and are not qualified and equipped to do the job properly. It simply is not going to happen.
One question directly to you, Mr. Jonas. Are you still against renegotiating the oil contract?
Charles, you say against or for, and you're talking about a simplification. If you and I agree that I will sell you my car for $500, then we are bound, and I have to give you my car, and you have to give me $500.
But those are apples and oranges, Mr. Jonas. Those are the same thing.
There is no way that you can come to me tomorrow and say you are renegotiating, and you're only giving me $400 for my car. Now, you're saying that's apples and oranges, but let me tell you, there is a binding agreement between the parties, and that agreement carries with it sanctions, penalties, mutual obligations.
Mr. Jonas, sorry to
and
cut
how
you, but
is it that you
Mr.
can say it's
Jonas,
apples and oranges if I am saying I can take you to an arbitration panel or I can take you to court and enforce what we have agreed between us?
No, Mr. Jonas, the contract also said that the contract can be renegotiated if both parties agree. So I'm saying to you...
Did you hear what you just said?
Huh?
Did you hear what you just said?
Yeah, that's what the contract says.
Both parties agree.
Okay,
so how do you unilaterally decide you are going to renegotiate and you have not asked if the other party agrees? Okay, if I sell my car to you, we can agree to change the price if both of us agree. How does that make it apples and oranges?
The question, Mr. Jonas, is in your judgment, has the government of Guyana made a request to Exxon for us to renegotiate the contract?
The government has not disclosed to the public if they've made any such request. If Exxon agrees to renegotiate, no one would be happier than me. But don't let us pretend that the government can do it unilaterally. And don't let's criticize the government because they don't do it unilaterally, because they can't. Both sides have to agree. Now, here's the thing, Giles. Do you see anywhere in our government the competence to embark on a negotiation of that contract? There certainly wasn't any in the last government. Now, how many times, if you didn't have the competence the first time, and you don't have the competence this time, when you renegotiated this time and you realize you did foolishness again, do you go and renegotiate a third time? At what point do you feel a bit embarrassed? We're big people, we're not children.
That is absolutely correct. And again, I'm so sorry, Mr. Harbhajan, that Rose, we're not locking out. But again, we spend millions of dollars to defend our border issue at the World Court. We select the best legal team according to the government. Why don't you think we can spend the same thing to have the best legal negotiators to get the best deal for us? Mr. Harbhajan, I am proposing a deal, and I'm going to come on a program on Globespan for us to renegotiate our contract. And I totally agree with Mr. Glenn Lal that we need to get 50% of our revenue from the oil. Period. I know Mr. Jonas is laughing. So far, we have something like 11 billion barrel reserve. And with a new discovery, eventually it'll be 20 billion barrels. Exxon will make their money 10 times over if they get 50% of the revenue for themselves, for the profit and for the cost. They will make their money many, many times over. So I'm saying out of that, Mr. Jonas, Mr. Harbhajan, that every Guyanese who work must get income of at least $2 million Ghana dollars a year, period. So if Guyanese want to, and this is not against the government, it's not against the opposition. This is to support both the government and the opposition, that the people of Guyana will have to decide what they want to do to push the government and Exxon to the table for renegotiation, knowing that if the renegotiation takes place and we get more revenue in the country, every Guyanese who work, they will be guaranteed at least $2 million Ghana dollars a year as income. Those are things we got to talk about, and the Guyanese got to decide if they want to do it or not. Mr. Harbhajan, what do you think in the next 2 years, there will be another election? With the migration of our Guyanese, what impact do you see migration have on the election coming up in 2025? Or likely to have?
I want to go on the question before I answer that one that you asked Jonas about the 10-day $40,000 workers. When you asked Jonas about where the revenue will come from for the increase in salary, let's take for East Berbice, we have 40,000 part-time workers, 10 days a week, and those workers, the payroll would be, I'm not good at maths, over 100 million per month, right? If you, now we are discussing shortage of workforce. You have 4,000 people on a 40,000 part-time, which I believe it was a good initiative by the vice president, but it's poorly managed or poorly advising the vice president the success rate and how does it benefit the country and the people in the region or your constituency. I believe, and it's a suggestion, I'm sure someone is looking, that the same 40,000 you take and you're giving these people for the 10-day work and you overstack the health center with 30, 40 person a day, schools, NDCs, and some of these agencies. Why not take the same 40,000 workers, put them in the private sector where employers can take them, and there is a win-win for the 40,000 workers. That one, the employer will mandate to give them an additional 40,000 and they will have productivities. The government will plug in the 40, that make it 80, so it no longer become a partner. These people will end up with more money in their pocket. They will end up with the skills and discipline. As you have right now, as Jonas say, we are going down the pipeline. These same $40,000 workers is not vision at the end of the tunnel. There's a bright light. The bright light will be in North America. So you can, the government can start out and say, look, well, we'll start something, and then you're not going to have the private sector who are complaining right now on their knees, begging for people to work. One of the biggest contractor in Berbice is Peter Lewis. He's paying up to $6,000 to $7,000 to $8,000 just for laborer to work where other contracts he have. You have another guy paying up to $10,000 to drive tractor. Eventually, these men are doing it themselves. So where you have all these 4,000 workers in my region, and I'm sure they have all across the different region, what are you doing to help the private sector when you do stuff like this? It is a good initiative, but it's poorly managed, or they need to recall it and think about it before they roll it out, and that's how you can help the private men. But that, like Jonas say, the private sector, some of the members are very quiet. They toe in the line, but I always believe if you be more independent and you push pressure on the government as a Chamber of Commerce, they may appreciate it with your ideas. But some of these guys, they don't want to speak out. There are quite a few. Back to your question, what impact the migration will make in the 2025 election? 2011, the PPP lost the majority. 2015, they lost the majority. because the Indian was either migrating and the few turned against them. 2020, due to the estate, there was a swing. 2025, with the rate of migration, Charles, I'm not good at the as bright as Dr. Rose is, I'm sure he did the groundwork. He can tell you the ratio he was saying is about 3 to 1. I think is less than that. You can go in an Afro community and you within 2 villages you can get about 2 or 3,000 people living in there. When you can go from 43 to all the way to another area, you may not even get 500 in there. So it will make a big change in the next election, and it will be which race will decide the election. I think it will be a tight one and a reasonable one. But I see both political parties hitting the fence and not addressing the main issue. The government is rolling out major development and infrastructure, but where are you finding the employee? Because people are leaving.
Mr. Jonas, with this migration we're talking about, worker Guyanese leaving, in your view, will this have an impact on the result of the next election, or likely to have an impact?
I'm not qualified to hazard a guess. I like the historical assessment that Harbhajan has given. I agree with it. And we are on a razor thin edge right now. The two ethnocentric parties are both unsure because the demography is so evenly balanced. And I still do not see that migration is one-sided. I really do see that everyone is still trying to get out. And I think of the people that I am personally aware of who are leaving. It's both sides of the fence. But it's a close balance. And I think that the approach by the government has not changed in terms of their administration and how they are managing the country. The approach by the opposition has not changed in terms of the method of criticism and what they hark back to. So we're seeing more of the same in terms of politics. And that I find to be curious, because you can't have more of the same in a situation where it's so finely poised, where it's so carefully balanced. I'm very curious to see what happens in 2025.
With the Indian population being about 38, 39, and in some people are saying it might be 37% by the next election, the African population is about 29%. The most growing population is the mixed race population. They're about 25% of the population now, with the Amerindians being about 12%. So if people continue to vote along ethnic lines, and we hope that change, but it's difficult to change people's mindset, then those who can get the mixed vote and the Amerindian vote will be the next government. Do you see it that way, or again, I'm oversimplifying it?
I know that we say there's a large mixed population. There is. It's evidence of how well the two races get along when it's not election time. But the truth is that you would rarely find a mixed race Guyanese who doesn't really identify one way or another. So go and find a mixed race, and you are likely to see that they either will identify as Afro or Indo. So I do think that you can't just identify them as a simple demographic that way. You got to see where their alliances are in terms of mommy or daddy or granny or uncle, to see how they identify ethnically. And that informs their voting patterns.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I see Anita is saying people might not vote along ethnic lines, which I hope that don't happen. But you're right that most of the mixed race, in my view, they seem to align themselves more as Afro-Guyanese than than an Amerindian Guyanese or an Indian Guyanese if the races are with Indian and African and so on, or Amerindian and African. So that's a very good point. I guess our sociologists maybe need to tell us exactly what the mindset of our people in determining that. And before Mr. Rose come on, do you see any opening? Is there any possibility of any third party making inroads into this paper? Someone wrote a nice article saying that we need a third party with an independent African, independent Indian, independent Amerindian. I'm sure there's a lot of those in Guyana. What is your view on a third party impact on the next election? Mr. Jonas, then Mr. Harbhajan, and then Dr. Rose.
Well, it's curious that you asked that of somebody who was formerly AFC. I'm hoping he's not still AFC, and someone who is still pushing a third party. As you know, my refrain is you can't just have the two parties running, because that would lead me to migrate. The only hope for Guyana is a minority government with the third party with a swing vote. So, and if I have anything to say, Anog will be there in 2025. And I think there is a real possibility, given the knife edge, that there may be a swing. There may be an independent parliament. Unfortunately, in 2012, AFC did nothing with the independent parliament. But we have some ideas.
Mr. Harbhajan?
Charles, I'm a product of a third force. That's the only political party I ever involved or engaged in. And it started off very well with good intention, was to hold the balance of the two major political party, and then it would bear fruit, down the line, decades to come. But what I find being there and holding some executive position within that party, we started to plant the same thing where we run from, the division and racism. If you're looking for a presidential candidate, the executive is trying to pick one of a different race and the prime minister from another. So we were fueling into the same thing we work against. If I see an opportunity, anyone can come with a third force, and if I will put my support in a third force or a seat, it's going to take a long time for me to make that decision. Unless I see people look at us as Guyanese presidential candidate and not this mixed thing or who come from what, and I started to tout as an independent person for activists. I'm activist for development and ideas. I'm starting to put it out there because I can't see small political party farming now, and then you're trying to make a balance with your executive because you want to prove a point to John Public. Somewhere along the line, you have to change it, because Guyana is not what it used to be. The way people think is not in the 70s and 80s anymore. The younger generation, you can communicate with them on your phone, not in a public meeting. So a new party with good intention, or if one of these major political parties, the PPP or the APNU, decide to change and go along the line or look at things differently, then I will. And a party that share my views for development and growth and a better Guyana, I don't know if I ever look at a third force again, because I was very hurt after 17 years with the AFC.
And before Dr. Rose, I want to answer the question, and you can ask your question. I guess Mr. Jonas is an excellent candidate, being of mixed race. He can be a true candidate for the office of president, because we look at it. African Guyanese, is Amerindian Guyanese, is Indian Guyanese. Who is Mr. Jonas? I guess it's a mixture of all of them. So, Mr. Jonas, maybe you're a prime candidate for that post next time around. Dr. Rose?
No, Charles, I'm not going to pretend to that. But what I could tell you is that that's not really important, because the third party is not going to win the government. The third party needs to understand how to control Parliament as an independent parliament.
That's realistic. Dr. Rose, you want to talk about, before you answer your question, what's your view of a third party in the next election, and what do you think might happen in 2025? What will be possible outcome of the election?
Now, all three of you, as I've learned tonight, are products of third parties. What happened in 2020? They had 10 third parties in power, and they barely scraped one seat. Mr. Jonas, what happened to Anog? You have to ask Schumann, what happened to his Liberal Democratic Party and all the rest? What happened, Mr. Jonas?
You're saying what happened at the election or what happened after?
What happened at the election in 2020? 10 third parties.
Well, you want me to answer?
Yes.
Okay. When the AFC came along, the AFC was the single third party. I know because I was there. I was part of it. I suspect I might have been part of it before Harbhajan. And as the single third voice, there was such a desperate need for it that it immediately got traction. People like me, people who were rejecting race politics, rejecting the ethnocentric parties and wanted a third option. So they immediately got traction. When they betrayed that trust because they did not understand what they were selling, that's the truth. They were selling a third party, a rejection of ethnic politics, and a higher moral landscape for politics. And they were attracting the people who were rejecting the same thing and who wanted better. And they sold that out and they joined one of the two parties, although their supporters were saying we are rejecting ethnic politics. You can't go to an ethnocentric party and join up if your supporters are rejecting ethnic politics. And the day that was announced, I told the chairman of AFC at the time, you are making a mistake. We don't have a choice. We got to vote for you because there's no other option. But this is a mistake. You will be subsumed. And it happened. So in 2020, after the coalition, with their complete lack of imagination, showed that they were incompetent, it was a two-party race. The PPP stalwarts were determined to get the PPP back. AFC had lost any possible support it had, and the APNU were determined to stay in at any cost. So it was a two-horse race. It was a two-horse race at all times, and it was not helped by the fact that those small parties, all of them, each one had some kind of messiah complex that thought they alone would be capable, by their own personal charisma and charm, of inspiring the masses to go with them. Total nonsense. So that although we made a great effort to bring all those third parties together into a single third party, we failed in that regard. But when you say all the third parties together only got a seat, that's not true. Because if you count the votes that were cast for all the third parties, Change Guyana got 20-something hundred votes.
But the total votes is 9,000.
You get 2 seats. You get two seats,
Charles.
Yeah.
2 seats,
Yeah.
Euclid. That, in the context of a one-seat majority government, is significant. So don't treat it lightly. In that two-horse race, when the PPP folk needed the PPP back, when the coalition folk were disgruntled but did not want to see the PPP again, and nobody was listening to a third voice, even in that context, when AFC had been subsumed and disappeared, there were 10,000 people that continued to reject. I believe today, if you had an elections, there'd be 25 or 30,000 people who rejected, who would reject today the ethnocentric parties and look for a third option.
Mr. Jonas, and where's Mr. Harbhajan? He's here. I'll come to Mr. Harbhajan. In 97% of the countries in the world today, only two parties are governing them. The bastion of democracy in the United States, either it's a Democrat or Republican. Canada is a conservative or a liberal. And I can go on and on and on. But let me say this to you. The United Force and the AFC were the only two viable third parties in Guyana. But you know what the truth is? Third parties in Guyana do not last more than 3 election cycles.
Well, let me give you another truth. First of all, your comparison is a flawed one. Because when you look at the States and when you look at Canada, there is nothing visible to distinguish a Republican from a Democrat. You can't identify one on the road by how he looks. But in Guyana, because of our ethnic makeup, you can look at an individual on the road in Guyana and know how he's voting for the most part.
I'm talking in terms of ideology.
So in the States, an individual might vote Republican this time and might vote Democrat next time. In Guyana, an individual takes in with his mother's milk how he's voting and will vote that way till he dies. So you can't make a comparison of the US or Canada or even the UK, where they have a bit stronger lines, with Guyana because of our peculiar situation. I don't like that comparison.
No.
Insofar as you talk about how long a third party will last,
90% of the
I can't speak for others.
In the world.
I can't speak for others, Euclid, about how long a third party will last. But I can only speak for Tim Jonas. And Tim Jonas will never support APNU or PPP.
Okay,
and I will also do the best I can to make sure that there is a third party so that there is an option for people like Tim Jonas who want to see something different and is rejecting ethnic politics.
Agreed. But I'm not making a comparison Guyana only. I'm telling you what exists in the world.
Well, please find one where you have two large races and two large ethnic parties. That's the only time you can do a comparison.
I'm not speaking in terms of races here. I'm speaking in terms of ideology.
Guyana is about that.
But Dr. Rose, even next door, Dr. Rose.
I'm coming to Guyana.
Dr. Rose, even Trinidad next door, a lot of crossover vote there. A lot of Indians vote PNM, Black vote UNC.
Okay.
So they're a little different there, even Trinidad.
I'm coming to Guyana. Because of the racial voting, no matter you twist or turn it, you'll have those two parties in power or two minority government or something of the sort. But let me go back to this. United Force, 64 it was okay. 68 it joined with Burnham, 73 disappeared. BFC, 2006 it was good. 2011 it was good. 2015 joined with APNU. What happened? It melted. And Mr. Jonas, Ralph Ramkaran, going to be in his 80s by 2025. Who will take over the leadership of his party? You said you're not interested. What viable, don't you see the party will disintegrate? What viable leader you have? What viable
I wasn't interested. In fact, I think I said the opposite. I said that as long as I am here, I will be doing my best to make sure that that third party is there and available. What I said is that the question is moot as the presidential candidate because the third party will not achieve the presidency. What the third party can do is get that swing vote in Parliament, and I hope to persuade you, Euclid, one day to, on your program, have a discussion on what a truly independent Parliament can achieve in Guyana, because that is a different question that AFC never broached and UF never broached because they were trying to sell we'll win the government.
Parliament is never independent.
Well, that is a large statement. I would take you up on that.
Parliament is never independent. And you know this.
I would definitely take you up on that. But Parliament isn't independent now because the government has the majority.
But even though they have a minority, they're going to do what they feel like doing, and you could a no confidence motion to go to elections again. So
why do you need a no confidence motion? You can pass laws, Euclid. In a majority opposition, you pass laws in Parliament.
I agree with that. You can pass laws.
Why do you say there's no such thing as an independent Parliament? Then?
You can pass laws in Parliament, but will the government carry it out?
So
who wants to sign the law that passed in Parliament?
I'm sorry?
Who wants to sign that law to make it legally binding in Parliament?
But that was AFC's failure because they never pushed that.
No, I'm asking you, when the opposition, let's say they have a majority in Parliament, when they pass a law, who have to sign it to make it legally binding on the people? Is the president. And if you don't sign it, it can't be legally binding.
He is obligated to sign it.
No, he's not. Harbhajan didn't sign many of the laws passed in 2011.
That's like saying that the police aren't obligated to enforce the law and the firemen aren't obligated to put out fires.
Mr. Jonas, if the president don't sign the law, what are you going to do? Tell the people what you're going to do.
You will not allow another law to be passed in Parliament using your opposition majority. You will go to court to get an order to compel him to sign it. And if he is willing to take the country to such a stage that he will break the law, refuse with no justification to sign a law that Parliament has passed, and also refuse in the face of no further activity from Parliament, no access to funds because Parliament doesn't approve, and in the face of court orders telling him to pass it, well then the people will see what kind of leadership we have evolved after 50 years of ethnopolitics.
True, but he can say the law is detrimental to the country, and he's the president. Anyway, I'm not going to get in any argument with that.
Well, it sounds like you did already. I hope you have a program on it because I can't believe you are saying that the president can just say he's not signing and that's the end of that.
But it happened already. It
We can
happened.
discuss that. I hope we can
I
discuss
know
that.
it
in another
happened.
forum.
Let me say this to you, though. Ralph Ramkaran is the leader of ANOG. He might not run in 2025.
I have to disagree with you again. Euclid, you've lost track of the times. I started out by saying there's been an internal election, and our chairman is a gentleman called Dr. France, and our general secretary is another, hopefully, gentleman called Timothy Jonas.
And who is the leader?
The party has 2 seats that are important in that regard. One is the chairman, who voices.
I think we lost Mr. Jonas.
Yeah, I think we lost it. The internet is bad.
Okay, Mr. Harbhajan, let me say this. Third parties, as I said.
I'm sorry about that. I lost you for a little while.
Yeah, okay.
No, but I ask you a question, Mr. Jonas. Who is the leader of ANOG today?
The chairman is the leader of ANOG, and that would be Mark France.
Who is he?
Dr. Mark France.
Oh, so Ralph Ramkaran is no longer the leader.
Ralph Ramkaran was the general secretary. I now hold that seat.
Okay. Now,
there's no appointment in the hierarchy called leader. So when you ask who's the leader, you're asking a non-question because there's no title, there's no designation in the rules that says leader.
Okay. Whatever structure you all have, that's okay. But I'm saying to you, and I want Mr. Harbhajan to weigh in on this as well, third parties don't stand a chance in Guyana. This vote coming up in 2025 going to be the most racial ever. I'm telling you this now because I can see the angles from what I'm gauging in Guyana. It's going to be an ethnically divided vote, and people will be told you vote for third party, you're going to put the country at risk.
So the question then I would ask you, Euclid, is with your best intentions and your best wishes for a successful and prosperous Guyana and for the lifting of our oppression and for better leadership, do you personally want to see a third party available on the ballot? Or do you want to see only 2 parties in 2025 when elections comes around?
Let me candidly answer you that question. I agree that any party can contest an election.
I didn't ask you if you agree if they can contest. I asked you what you want to see.
I want to see a viable third party.
Thank you, Euclid.
And if I don't know your candidate, who is the chairman, this means 99% of the people in Guyana don't know him.
No, that's not.
How is going to convince them?
You don't live here. You are here and you have introduced
Mr. Jonas,
and you
Mr.
know
Jonas, I don't live in Guyana. I can give you facts in Guyana that you don't even know. And you live there. And I can give the Guyanese this fact too. Because I was there 5 months.
Minutes more. You want to,
I was there 5 months last year, and I traveled the country and studied it. I went back December for another 3 months, and I studied it. I can give you information in Guyana that you don't even know. Politically, socially, and culturally.
Sorry, I got bounced off again. I don't know what's going on with our internet.
No, but I'm saying to you, I don't have to live in Guyana to know the facts. I can give you information in Guyana that you don't even know.
Well, obviously you know what I know, and that is a stretch. I'm very impressed.
Okay, Mr. Jonas.
Gentlemen, we talk about third force. Mr. Dr. Rose,
let me just
Mr. Jonas asking you if you support the third force.
Let me ask you a simple question. What's the number of, Charles mentioned the mixed race. How many mixed race in Guyana? You said it can't be conquered, and I dispute that because I know there's a number for it. How many mixed races are in Guyana?
I don't understand that question. You're asking
how many? The mixed race in Guyana is 19%, and I'm telling you, 146,000. And in the last election, 104,000 voted. And I can show the stats on that.
And what's your point?
I'm not going to go there with you. So my point is this.
What's your point?
My point is this. You said the mixed race is not a demarcation race because nobody knows, nobody talk about, can measure them. And that's not true.
That's not what I said. If you check the recording, and I know you recorded this, what I said, and Charles agreed with me, is that although we call them mixed race, that's a simplification because many of them, in fact, I would say most of them, identify internally with one or the other of the two races.
Okay. Okay, but let me answer your
question. You will remember, and I think Charles will remember that he agreed when I said that.
Let me answer the question. Let me answer the question you asked me, what I think of a third party. Normally, I'm supposed to be asking the questions, not answering questions. But let me say this. Unless I see that all the third parties get out of their whatever egotistical attitude they are and join one force and come together and form one party, not 10, then there's something viable. But when you have 7, 8, 9, 10, it's a gymnastic. You're not going to win anything. So if all those parties can come together and join with ANOG, we're going to throw support behind ANOG, then I say something is viable. That's the question you asked me. I'm giving you the answer.
No, that wasn't the question I asked.
Well, gentlemen, our time, we have come to program time. I mean, sorry, we have to continue discussion sometime about Guyana, the migration, and the effect it have on our election and our development and so on. So we need to continue this discussion. So, Mr. Harbhajan, anything in closing?
Yeah, in closing, I would like to, let me just add a little bit to Jonas and Rosal, if you allow me 2 seconds, is that I'm a strong believer, I'm a strong believer that, a few seats here and there in Parliament, as much as the two major political parties dominated, it's always going to be a plus in different opinion. And somewhere along the line, I don't see there's an opposition we have right now. 2020 election, if the infrastructure development continue, PPP might have an edge. A small party, yes, will come on, and I wish them luck for a seat here and there because you need some independent mind. In closing, Charles, with the migration and the workforce, with all the development and infrastructure in this country, labor force is very important. I will urge the people who are migrating in large numbers to rethink the decision, and rather than go overseas, hide behind a smartphone and a computer and try to dictate how Guyana run. When they're here, they're not making no impact. So when they go, then they try to make one. Guyana have opportunity, stay, bear with it a little bit, and we never have oil before. Money gonna come and stream. It's going to flow, but workforce is important. That's my contribution.
Thank you. Mr. Jonas, anything in closing?
Yes, I want to acknowledge Harbhajan. He was one of the forerunners of the people who publicly set himself aside and said he is rejecting the political status quo and he is going with a third force. And having left that third force, he did not go back to one of the big two, because he recognizes the harm in the two and the need for another option. I want to acknowledge him and recognize him. I'm glad I was on the show with him. And I want to say that as Guyanese, you can only do the best you can. You can't dictate what others do. And if you have decided that this position is wrong for Guyana and that another position is right, for example, a third party is the only way to go, then whether you stand alone or whether you stand with others, as an individual, you have to stand and do the best that you can. And I acknowledge Harbhajan for having taken his stand. I hope he hasn't stopped his fight. I hope to see him again in the future. But that is what you do. So whether you have support or not, whether you have friends or not, a man and a woman, you have to, as a human being and as a Guyanese and as a patriot, do the best that you can do. And if you recognize the harm in ethnic politics, there's only one answer: reject ethnic politics.
Thank you, Mr. Jonas. And you've been saying that all the time. Dr. Rose, anything in closing?
Yes, I'm calling for an end to blackouts, water shortage, and potholes on the roads. I'm also calling for the public service to have a pay, at least an increase of pay to $150,000 a month. I'm calling for the increase of retirement age from 55 to 62. And I'm also calling for a better internet system. The country needs these things and need them urgently. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Dr. Rose. Thank you, Mr. Jonas, Senior Counsel, Mr. Harbhajan. And on behalf of Globespan 24x7 and all of us on Devon and Nohar Singh, we want to thank you, our viewers, for being with us. We look forward to seeing you next Monday as we continue our program here on Globespan. So take care. God bless our great country of Guyana. Thank you.
Thank you,